Hello, hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to my Instagram live. And if you're watching on the replay, put in hashtag replay in the comments. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So super excited to be here with you because I'm giving an update on my surrender experiment. I'm actually no longer calling it an experiment, and I will explain why. So in particular, today I want to first explain what my surrender lifestyle is, why I'm doing it, and why I'm sharing it publicly. And I'd love to hear from you. Where in the journey are you? Are you all the way on the spectrum of, yes, I surrender to the divine and God leads my everything? Or are you on the super control side where you think that you have to do everything by yourself? Or maybe you're somewhere in between. On a scale from, 1 to 10, we can ask you to pop that in. So I'm talking about this idea of surrender. And I'm coming from a place of, on that spectrum of being a total control freak, or being someone who allows God to divinely guide everything. I used to be about a 2 on the scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is totally accepting and trusting your intuition and God and the universe. I was like a 2. And I'd love it if you type in, what about you? Where are you on the spectrum of being, 0 trust in the divine, you have to do everything yourself, to a full 10 where you totally trust the universe, God, life, whatever you want to call it? Well, I often write and speak a lot about programming, the mental programs that we picked up as children, really, for most of us, dictate everything going on in our lives, unless and until we become conscious. Unless we are willing to take responsibility for our life and to be a conscious choice maker, and that's still in communion with the divine. But until we make that clear distinction that I'm going to live intentionally or consciously, for most of us, we're on autopilot. Whatever's been programmed, whatever's, in the back of the head, that is running our life. And that is typically why we see the same situations, patterns, relationships, people. There's a saying, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I'll say that again a little bit later. But if you, welcome as you're coming in. We're talking about surrender, and I'm updating you on why I'm doing this. If you are one of those people that feels like you have to control everything, I'm inviting you to ask and answer the question, where'd that come from? Why do you do that? Because it's our programming. So for me, growing up in a somewhat dysfunctional, chaotic household in the early years of my life, I was pretty much shown that the way to be safe is to follow my dad's rules. And the way to get attention or love or validation was to get good grades, do well in school. So I was programmed to be achievement-oriented and to seek validation and approval from the outside world. It wasn't impressed on me very early, all the things that I'm sharing now in my books and on stage, that idea that we can trust, that we have innate wisdom, that you as a soul, you have your own mission to fulfill in the world. I know that that's true now, but that was not my experience growing up. My experience growing up was, you need to get a good education, get a job, preferably with a pension, follow in the line. And so I learned to not trust my instincts and my internal wisdom that was pulling and leading and guiding me to the performing arts, for example. Instead, I was pushed, prodded, and nudged to be a achievement seeker. And on the severe end of that spectrum, it drove me to perfectionism. I had this compulsive need to prove myself, to get validation, to get certifications, to show the world that I was worthy. And that was exhausting. And with that mindset being reinforced for all of those years, and then getting into a profession as a medical doctor that reinforced that position, that there are rules, there are protocols, you need to know your stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, because we doctors can save lives. You want your surgeon to actually know the standard of care. I have no problem with that. But there is a slight edge in some of the American medical model that, for me, impacted me in a way that I continued to strive for perfection and proving myself. And it was exhausting. So I was kind of grown up to believe that I needed to control things, that I needed to control myself, the way I spoke, the way I showed up. How much did I know? How did I speak? Was I well behaved? Was I well spoken and well studied? Like, all of that was impressed upon me. And to be honest, it was reinforced with positive reinforcements, because getting good grades, I got money from my dad, or getting good grades, I got into a great med school. And so there were things that were also reinforcing it. But as I said, that became exhausting. And ultimately, for me, besides the burnout and the physical and emotional exhaustion, all of that driving for perfectionism and seeking approval and seeking validation, it also led me away from my heart, from trusting myself. And I don't know, is that something that you deal with too? Do you trust yourself, your own heart, to lead you to what is good for you in life? Because you were born with that innate capacity. Like, we humans have an innate vitality code. We have an inborn or innate capacity to know what is good for us. Now, everything exists on a spectrum. We can go after something good and then it gets perverted and becomes an addiction. But that's only, again, based on what happens in the outside world. So, do you trust your intuition, your gut, or your heart? Type into the chat. Someone, please. I haven't heard anyone. I haven't seen anyone commenting. Do you trust your heart, your gut, or your instincts? That's question number one. And if not, why? Where did the distrust come from? Were you programmed like me to trust books and authority figures more than yourself? Let me know. The next question that we ask is, how much do you trust life? Whether we're talking about God, energy, the universe, or life, do you trust that life will look after you, that things will tend to work out for the best, that there is a guiding presence? I mean, whatever you want to call that. Type in. Do you believe that you can trust life, God, love, that greater force, the God of your understanding? So there's two parts to this conversation around surrender. One is trusting that I have an innate capacity to know what's good for me and to take care of myself. And the second is a sense of faith or trust that the universe, that God, that the life force that brought us into this world is also in partnership with us and wants the best for us. So, hey Callie, out in California. Callie says, I was taught to listen to outside voices instead of the inner voice. Don't know how to find her. Well, I think you do know. You've shared some writing with me before, Callie, that I think you know how to tune in. But I'm going to just share with you a couple of ideas on how you can tune in and trust. So I asked earlier, and I didn't see anyone type in yet, where are you on the spectrum? If we said we're on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 meaning I have zero trust in God, I got to do everything myself, to 10 meaning I trust God or the universe or life, and I can let go and surrender to whatever guidance comes. All right, so Kali says, I mostly trust the universe, mostly. So is that an 8 or a 9, on your scale? Because for me, not trusting meant that I was always fixed on my objective, getting things done my way, or in whatever way that the outside standard had been set. And for me, that led to a lot of disappointment. Besides the burnout, besides the overwhelm, I was in serious stress every time one of my plans didn't go well. Or I would have that inner critic coming back on me, telling me I was worthless, that I was stupid, that I was dumb. And then that led to a whole other cascade of hiding, turning down opportunities, downplaying my talents or accomplishments. So, all right, so now we've got some scores coming in. So we've got an 8 on the scale, closer to trusting God. Someone's in the middle with a 5. Kali's on the 7 to 8 level. All right. So why am I asking you this? Well, for me, I recognized, okay, I'm 50 years old. You would have thought that I'd learn earlier, but whatever. Hard-headed me, after experiencing burnout and so much depression and disappointment, over the last several years, I have recognized that I needed to surrender. I needed to let go of this egoic control and just trust in the divine and trust in myself. Trust that I will know what's good for me, that I won't be just reflexively taking on projects or getting into relationships based on old programming. I didn't have that overnight. I've developed it over time. And about 10 months ago, my mother had a stroke. And this was in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And I could not leave my home of France to fly back to the United States. In fact, it's not that I just couldn't because of COVID and travel. The doctors at the ICU said, don't even bother. By the time you get here, your mother will be dead. And even if you got here, you wouldn't be able to get into the ICU because COVID restrictions were that forceful. So at that time, I was already working on surrender, but I recognized if I keep fixed and trying to get my way and forcing things, I knew I was going to break down or burn out. And that was the moment when I started reflecting back on all of the programming, my programming from childhood, and not just the negative, but also the positive. Like my mom had this internal drive to become a physician and to be a helper. And that was driven by her mother. She lost her mom. My mom lost her mother when she was just 10 years old because her mom died of type 2 diabetes complications. And so my mom went to nursing school and later went to med school, and she was always guided by this force of wanting to help and heal. And my mom always believed that she was living for, as she calls it, the man upstairs. And so after my mom's stroke last August, I started really reflecting on her lessons and what I wanted to take forward. And she had a great faith in the divine and in her capacities. So I said at the beginning of this that there's 2 pieces to surrender as I see it now at this stage. One piece of being able to surrender our will to the divine and live in a state of more flow, more peace. It's one, trusting in our innate capacity, our intuition, our gut instincts to lead us to health and vitality and the right relationships and the right, quote unquote, the right path for us, for our evolution. The second part of it is trusting in life or God. And my mother had both of those. she fiercely believed in her intuition and her instincts to guide her. And she fiercely believed that there's a loving presence that she called God. So as I started looking over this, and I thought, okay, I have been doing this my way, the create a plan and go after it and, drive myself crazy. And I decided, no, I need to surrender more. I already work in concert with the divine, but I felt like I needed to make it a bigger, well, it started off as an experiment. Like, okay, what would happen if instead of doing marketing, I know some of you have taken my marketing classes, I have a background in broadcast media and communications and brand strategy. So I used to be a marketer, I knew how to do all of this marketing funnels and all of that. But last year I decided to let a lot of that go. And instead just trusting that if I share from the heart something that I'm offering to people, the right people will find it and they'll enroll. I don't need to do slimy, sleazy sales tactics. And I also started taking on bigger projects, like my documentary film, like expanding Innate Vitality, my health and wellness company. Like these things, I decided I have done all the planning that I could, and then COVID happened. And I couldn't outplan all the craziness of COVID. So I had to surrender. And for me, surrender in that way, when I had investors on the line, people that I'd made commitments to, that level of surrender required a lot of courage. And I've been recently talking a lot about courage with one of my dear friends and colleagues, Helena Philipsen in Denmark. And as I was staying at her house a week and a half ago, I really started to hear more and more of this conversation around conscious courage. And it's interesting, if you tune into one of our live sessions, she's the host of Coffee and Courage. That's at 8 a.m. Copenhagen time, which is nighttime for you folks in America. But she's been hosting these conversations, particularly around conscious courage. And in Danish, there's two ways to talk about courage and bravery, and the word is very similar. Don't ask me to pronounce it because my Danish is not great. But it's interesting because when I think of the word brave, I think of that quality of just pushing through the fear. It's a drive. I mean, see my hand. It feels like a drive. Whereas courage, if you look at, I love etymology, if you look at the root of the word courage, cour ou cœur, en français, in French, that means heart, cœur. And so rather than being brave, which is full of brawn and might and force, courage is with heart. And so this idea of conscious courage means I am consciously choosing to, in some cases, yes, face my fear, but also to do it in a more soulful way rather than an egoic way. So I hope you'll check out Coffee and Courage. We'll be live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central European Standard Time. For me, now having done this for almost a year, I'm no longer calling it a surrender experiment. It's become a lifestyle. I'm not perfect at it yet. Don't worry, I'm not going to start writing books and teaching a course on it. I'm still living it. But what I've noticed is if every day I tune into my own heart, and I typically put in little earbuds, I listen to some magical binaural beat meditations from the Brainwave Club, I get into a zone and I journal. I tune into the heart and or my mind, whatever is coming, and I just get it out. No censoring, no editing. And then once my, whatever's in there is kind of out, I just tune in and I ask, what do I need to focus on today? And sometimes it's self-care and health stuff. Sometimes it's business stuff. But the biggest piece of the surrender pie for me is this idea of letting go of rigid scheduling. And that was a hard one for me because I'm a solopreneur, single mom, running a company in the south of France, clients in all over the world. Like, in order to do all of that, running a publishing company and all that, like, it takes a certain level of precision. And I've gotten really good at that. But I've also noticed that I needed to surrender and have more flexibility in how I allow my day to unfold. And today was a perfect example. I had everything mapped out hour by hour with what I wanted to do. And I woke up and my energy was not aligned with that schedule. And at first, I got really down on myself. I started just whinging and moaning. But then I remembered this little trick that, I don't know, I think I started doing this as a teenager. Anytime I would have like this really bad mood that I couldn't shake, once I realized that the situation couldn't be changed, I realized I had to change myself. And so for any of you who know the serenity prayer, we say, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So even as a teenager, when I recognized that I couldn't change certain things, and the only thing I could change was me, I devised this little trick. I don't know where I learned it, but I devised this trick to say, okay, the morning started off crap. What if I pretended that I meant to do it? That it was perfectly meant to be that way. So this was reinforced when I got into university studying theater. In theater, we always ask, like, what's my motivation? Why am I doing things? And we pretend as if, this is a cup of coffee, right? So the idea is, what if this day was absolutely meant to be in the flow that it was flowing and not the way I scheduled and planned it? That took a little bit of time, but as I went into meditation, I just tuned into the heart to say, all right, what do you really want to do? Like, what, obviously I had certain commitments, but I had some leeway in my scheduling. And lo and behold, my mood shifted. It's as if that part of me, that perfectionistic part, that taskmaster part, once I got it to step aside and I tuned into the heart, then I was more in flow. And so part of it is trusting myself. And as I said, the other part of it is trusting the divine. Now, if you happen to be somewhat like me, maybe a little more left brain, analytical, see it when you believe it, or believe it when you see it, the other piece that helped me in my surrender process was looking over a timeline of my life and making note of every single time that I could tell that the universe had my back, that God, the universe, love, whatever you want to call it, I looked back to see, can I trust the universe? And what I found is that every major big thing, positive I'm talking about, all of the blessings, all of the hookups, they were not because I had been striving and networking and forcing. All of the good, beautiful blessings in my life came from some divine source, synchronicities. So that helped in this process of trusting, to let go of the reins of control, to trust that, yeah, I can actually tune in, pray about it, ask for guidance, and then follow that guidance. One of the ways that that's been really amazing is my documentary film. And again, this comes from having a little bit of perspective on kind of how my brain works. I've shared before that I used to have a lot of shame over having so many interests. My father used to say, oh, you're a dilettante just like your old dad. You need to focus. But I am a multi-passionate person. I love a lot of things, and I'm really good at a lot of things. But sometimes I would start a project and either the energy would wane or something else would come up, and then I'd start another project. And I've been clever enough to discern now which projects I should actually start. Like, are they in alignment with my core values, my heart, my destiny, or is it just the ego trying to get in? But I was also feeling like really frustrated with this documentary film, because I had conceived of the idea so many years ago, started with our first person that I invited into the film, the beautiful Soul Whitefire from Iceland. And I just thought, back in 2018, we were going to just jump on in and get it all going, right? But that didn't happen. We started shooting in 2019. And then 2020, we only got to shoot in LA with the beautiful Dr. 𝐬𝐿𝐿, who will be live with me on Thursday. And then just so much congestion in the energy came up that I reflexively blamed myself. I thought it was all me. Well, while working with this wonderful production and film guy, an editor, Ollie, in the United States, we worked out a production schedule for this year to get it done, because he was the one who was able to use COVID appropriate measures to do the filming. And it was pretty amazing, because we mapped it all out for me to finish the film. And on my long list of the experts that I want in this film about resilience is the wonderful Judith Pennington from the Institute for the Awakened Mind. She's in America. Dr. Arne Heisel, who is in Berlin, and all of the other amazing experts. And I wanted to put it on the calendar. I want to know, when am I flying in? When are we shooting this? And I was told by my sponsor to just let go and to do some journaling about, the blocks. And what came up for me was recognizing that it's not blocked. It's just flowing in a different way. And what also came up was 3 weeks ago, last month, Dr. Jill and I went to Iceland, met up with our beautiful friend, Soul Whitefire, and Jill and I participated in a ceremony, a shamanic ceremony with sacred plant medicine. And that just sort of expanded my consciousness. Well, it's beyond expansion. It was a complete dissolution of my ego and a complete merging into the oneness of the divine. And coming out of that and now integrating that experience over the last couple of weeks, so much of what I intended to include in the film has become even clearer. It's like the focus on the lens of a camera. The clarity right now is amazing. So the very same day that I was talking with my mentor about the film and getting all down on myself, I had a call with Judith Pennington from the Institute for the Awakened Mind, and this guy Stefano in Italy from the Monroe Institute. And we're working out shooting. And Arne Heisel will be there as well. So we're working out the shoot in Italy, so I don't even have to fly to America. So why am I telling you this long story? Because in all of my frustration, that is affecting my energy, of course. It affects me as a parent and me as a coach and a mentor. And who knows what that energy might be doing destructively. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I can tell you personally, it wasn't a good place to be. And every time that I have surrendered and been in flow, things just seem to fall into place with such ease and such perfection. And so that's where I am. I have, in the last few days, I've tuned in and literally prayed for guidance. Okay, what's next on my path? I don't want to be too rigid, but there is still a part of me that likes to know what's next. And so part of what's next for me is starting on a course to become a psychedelic assisted therapy facilitator. That's right, I'm going for the certification. I know, you may have actually heard me say, the joke in my family is that Andrea has more degrees than a thermometer. Degrees, certifications, I'm your girl. But this one really feels like it's bringing all of me together, to be able to facilitate the preparation and the integration of therapy sessions for those people who want to do sacred plant medicine or ketamine, or when it's FDA approved, MDMA or psilocybin. I happen to live in Europe, where there are countries where we can facilitate journeys like with the magic mushrooms, psilocybin. For me, being able to do that, in whether we use medicine or not, helping people to get into these expanded states of consciousness where they can truly access the self, the core self, the essential self, your true self. That's what all of my life's work has been leading me to. And to be able to include that in the film, if I'd finished the film in 2018, it wouldn't have that. So again, coming back to this idea of courage and surrender, the part of me that likes to know that I'm checking all the boxes, well, that part of me is now reassured, because I can look back over my life and even over the last few weeks to see that the divine, the universe, has been leading and guiding and supporting me all along, even now, and even like lightning fast. So how about y'all? What are you struggling with? Or are you already in this path of surrender? Is it working for you? Let me know. I'm curious to hear. If you're curious to hear about some of what Jill is sharing in the documentary film, oh, I didn't say that. Dr. Jill Stalker is also in the Resilience documentary. She and I are going live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn this Thursday at this same time. We are going to be talking about a hormonal awakening. And Jill is a specialist in hormone optimization, and she's also joining me on this psychedelic facilitator journey. Super excited. But one of the cool things about the training that both Jill and I have done in age management medicine and hormone optimization is helping people recognize and accurately diagnose certain disorders, like mood disorders. So I'll save that for Thursday. I hope you'll join us, because what Jill is sharing in the film and now on stages, teaching other doctors, and what she's helping me with personally with my hormonal awakening, it's big. It's really big. So that's on Thursday. So glad to be here with you, saying hello to Helena Philipson. Yes, yay for courage. I will see you, Helena, tomorrow in the Coffee and Courage morning session. You can follow Helena so that you get updates on that. Follow at Dr. Jill Stalker for updates on hormone optimization and our work together. If you missed any part of this, definitely watch the replay, because I want to know, even if you're watching the replay, type in the chat, where are you on that scale of 0 to 10 in terms of your level of control versus surrender? I'd love to know. So Helena says, surrendering is a process for me. Some days are just blissfully easies. Some days, little self will call me up and ask for control. Yeah, that was me this morning. But fortunately, surrender came easier today. And thank you, Helena, for your insights and supporting me and getting out of my bad mood. I was able to hug myself and say, okay, I forgive myself for getting all worked up and pissed off about the way my day started and about the heat. I mean, y'all see me sweating here, right? The south of France is crazy. Anyway, it's been lovely to connect with you. I don't always go live on Insta, so it's lovely to be here with you. And if you're watching on the replay, it's lovely to have your energy here as well. Feel free to send me a message if you have any questions. I will continue to update you on my surrender lifestyle and all of the cool blessings that have been coming my way. C'est vraiment génial, I can tell you. I'm loving it. So thanks for being here. Much love to you all. And you wish you had heat in Belgium. Sorry, Anthony. I don't know if you want this, though. It's rough. Anyway, my dear friends, I will see you Thursday. Or tomorrow in the Coffee and Courage with at Helena Phillipson. She is a doctor. She's the wise one. See you guys. Much love.